Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Discover new strategies and tactics as Susan Solovic interviews today's top business leaders and entrepreneurs to reveal their stories and insights. And now, the host of the 1% Edge, business expert Susan Solovic.
Hello, thanks for joining me for the 1% Edge podcast. This is the program where I get to bring you innovative ideas to help you get unstuck from the old ways of doing business and positioned to be on the leading edge of your industry. It's all about incremental enhancements that will give you a solid, ongoing competitive edge. In one chapter of my new book, The 1% Edge, I focus on marketing. See, with all the new platforms available to us today, for us to be able to get our branding message out there, it can be really confusing, intimidating, and quite frankly, overwhelming. So I find that many business leaders, while they recognize the need to rise above the communication clutter, but they are lost at how to accomplish that goal. While finding the right venue for your marketing message may seem challenging, it provides greater opportunities than businesses had even a decade ago. Back then, and I had an advertising and PR agency years ago, but back then all we really had to deal with to get the message out there was traditional media outlets such as radio, television, and print. But today, there's so many platforms and venues, and one of the most popular, which is growing like crazy, is podcasting. Last year, 112 million Americans listened to podcasts. It's an inexpensive and effective way to raise awareness about your brand and become a recognized expert in your industry. However, building a podcast doesn't happen overnight. You have to build a following, and you have to create a significant return on your investment, which takes time and commitment to excellence. To help you get started, I've invited the expert, no one better, Dave Jackson, to be my guest today. This guy has been an award-winning podcaster since 2005. And get this, he has recorded more than 3,000 podcasts with more than 3.2 million downloads. And no wonder, he is the founder of the School of Podcasting, and he's here to share his expertise with all of us today. Thanks for joining me, Dave.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So one of the questions I get a lot is quite simply, I've got so much going on in my business. I'm trying to keep things going, and I feel like I'm that little hamster on on a little wheel going around and around and around. One more thing, why should I start a podcast?
There are a lot of reasons. I'll try to go through these quickly. Number one, whether you want to be or not, you're going to be seen as an expert. Because I started a podcast to what was going to be documenting my weight loss journey, which turned into my weight loss journey, my weight gain journey, my weight loss journey. But I get all these super, they think I'm a doctor, even though I say at the beginning of the show, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a trainer. So it's just that expert, just because nobody else is doing it.
Sure.
You just automatically seen that. You're going to reach a global community. The very first piece of audio feedback I got from my audience was from Nuremberg, Germany. Michael Van Laar, never will forget it. And I was I'm in Ohio. I was out with the cows in the basement next to the water heater, and there's a guy on the other side of the planet listening to my stuff.
Wow.
You're gonna have time-shifted conversations. So that's the fun thing. You put it out, your audience can listen whenever they want. And then that actually leads to, if you have a product, improving it, because now you're getting direct feedback from your target audience. And a lot of times I've had things where people go, do you know if anybody does this? And I go, no, but I could. And so it leads to that. When you deliver valuable content on a regular basis, basically they get to do the old know, like, and trust you. So when you do say, hey, I have this product, I have a client of mine that sells, and it's all about the niche. He does chameleon breeding. Oh, and he makes these cages, and people have said, look, I could buy cages from overseas much cheaper, but I'm going to buy them from you because you've given so much to the community. So it's that whole law of reciprocity that gets going on. And then just the opportunity to build your network.
Well, and I do think that, just in my own experience, that when people hear you or they see if it's video and a podcast, they get a sense that they know you. Like it's sort of like we used to, Walter Cronkite used to come in our living rooms at dinner time and talk to us, and we all felt like we knew him. He was a part of our families. Do you find that effect with your podcasting experience?
Yeah, I was just at an event this this past weekend. I actually got roasted, which was kind of interesting. But I had all these people coming up, and I had one person that quoted something I said 13 years ago. And it's just one of those, I don't remember what I had for breakfast. And he's like, do you remember when you said this? But it had impacted him. And it's the same thing. People have heard, it's funny. Last year I had a cat that used to interrupt my show. And so I just made him part of the show. I would just introduce him when he came in. And I had so many people come up because I had to have him. He was very, very old. And I had so many people come up to him and say, I'm so sorry about your cat. I'm so sorry about your cat. So they were there with me the whole time. So yeah, it is a fun little effect that they get to know you.
That's great. I have 2 little dogs, and every once in a while you hear them yapping in the background.
Yeah.
So it's just part of it, right?
That's it. I got tired of editing it out. So.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. You have a great voice. I started out my career in broadcasting, and a lot of people say to me, oh, come on, I can't do it. My voice sounds horrible. I hate to hear myself. What would you say to those people?
I would say it's scientific. You're going to hate your voice. It's weird, but when you actually listen to yourself, you're listening with your skull. It's a fun little phrase, bone conduction, wow. Which is why you sound bassier when you talk. When you actually hear your voice back through speakers, you're not listening with your skull anymore, just your ears. And I always say it's kind of like having a stereo and somebody unplugged the woofer. All of a sudden you sound kind of different and thin. And it's not bad, it's just different. But there are a lot of people, I've known people like, oh, I just can't get this. I hate the sound of my own voice. And I'm like, that's just something to get over.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think today when people listen to podcasts, they listen to podcasts for the content and the information that's being shared, not that they expect you to be a professional radio broadcaster, right? Yeah,
when it first started, that was the great thing about it is people weren't doing weather and, traffic and weather on the 10s. They weren't, it's like they sounded like a normal person. I think that was one of the big draws to it.
So another concern for a lot of people that I talk to about podcasting is they think it's going to cost a lot of money to get the equipment and all set up. When, in my experience, it can be relatively inexpensive to get started.
Absolutely. I have, and now if you're listening to just the audio, but there's a microphone. It costs $80, and the one I'm talking into right now costs $300. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two. And I always say you can get started for about the price of an Xbox. If you don't have a website or anything, you're starting from absolute scratch. You're looking at somewhere between $100 and $300. Now, obviously, the more people you add, if you have a panel or things like that, then everybody's going to need a microphone. But it's really, it's people want to spend thousands, and I'm like, no, you can get going for hundreds.
So if you're going to invest a little bit of money, but most importantly, your time, because we all know time is money, how do you make sure the podcast gets out there and people hear it?
It is a matter of, that's the hard part. It's like writing a book. You think writing the book is the hard part. Getting people to read it is the hard part. And so for me, when it comes to podcast promotion, it boils down to figure out who your audience is. Well, you should know that before you start recording, because how do you know if your show is going to be any good? Go to where they are. And then everybody wants to skip this step. You have to make friends with them. And then tell them about your podcast. Because if you just walk into a room,